Welcome, everybody, to this talk from ING. And it says, do you need DevOps to enable streaming data analytics? So that's a mouthful, and it's a question that we're going to answer to you in the next 40 minutes. So, we'll introduce ourselves in a minute. But first, before we start, if this is about streaming analytics and about data, I have a question for you, Giuseppe. When did you first realize how important data was?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I think it was 1 year ago, and I was around this area. Does any of you know this place, or have you been there or seen it? Well, no, nobody? Well, this place is called Rio Celeste, and it's in Costa Rica. So basically, to respond to the question, I will use this example, because I was 1 year ago traveling there to Costa Rica, to San Jose, 12 hours of flight, and so you arrive there, and it was quite hot, humid. So the first things you want to do there is, okay, let's get some money, so some local valuta, colones back then. So after 12 hours of flight, you're tired. I went out, I went to the first ATM. It was from one of the first bank of Costa Rica, and tried to get some cash with my previous bank. But then it didn't work, because there was no partnership between my previous bank and that bank. And that created me a really unpleasant feeling. You know, you just go for holiday, you fly 12 hours, you are there, and then what? I'm without cash, I have to live on a budget, only on my credit card. And that's kind of pity, you know, because how come my bank didn't know that I was going to Costa Rica? I bought my ticket with the same bank. I bought the hotel with the same bank. So they had access to all the transaction to understand that. And why yet they didn't come with the idea to inform me about which bank they had the partnership together with. So to come back to the question, no, the thing is that if you see this picture, no, it's a waterfall, and whatever we do in our life, we leave trace of data everywhere, in doing shopping, in buying flying ticket, hotel. So we leave data everywhere. We cannot stop it. It's like a flow. It's like a waterfall, and it's about us as a company to decide whether we want to make out of this waterfall an amazing blue color like this, or we want to just let it go and lose the moment.
So let's see, how did you pick that one up? And first, say something about yourself.
So now going back to ourselves, my name is Giuseppe D'Alessio. I'm Italian, but I moved to Holland 4 years ago, and I work at ING as a data engineer, and I'm also a chapter lead, which means like an IT manager for a team. Yeah. Okay,
and I'm Bakker, colleague of Giuseppe at ING. I'm currently ad interim area lead, but that's mainly that I'm responsible for the engineering culture within ING, specifically for DevOps and continuous delivery. So this is something about ING, and maybe you know ING. If you're from Holland, you probably do know ING or the previous one, Postbank, etc. I usually say ING is a pretty big financial institution. Not the largest in the world, but it's pretty big in 41 countries. And it's an old company, 1881. And still, we think we are a modern company, because we think we are an IT company with a banking license. And maybe you wouldn't expect that. We kind of, if you're from Holland, you know we're sometimes in the news, not always positive. But we really try to make a difference here as ING, a difference in the market. And we'll explain about it in the presentation. But we really are stepping up to the fintech stuff. So in this presentation, we're going to connect that to the streaming data analytics story. So let's have a look.
Yeah, so now going back to the point, no, like why data is really important for a company. We are coming from an era where before you were just offering a service to your customers, and they were quite happy with that. But nowadays, they want to have more. They want to have a service which is personalized and relevant for itself. And we see a lot of partners at other companies coming in and using data to improve the service that we offer. Think about PSD2, for instance. With that one, other company will be allowed to use our data in order to provide even better services. So we have to adapt. We have to adapt the service that we offer and make them more personal and relevant for our customers. So we have to be also more proactive with that. And that's something that I like to summarize this concept. So we live in a world where companies are starting and like growing, failing in few weeks, we can say. And it's really important that because as a bank we have a lot of data about transaction, about behaviors, about product, we need to use this data in such a way that we can actually help our customers in their journey. Okay. And that's why now we connect to the streaming analytics. Why streaming analytics is really important? Because as we've seen with the waterfall, the data is flowing and it cannot be stopped. So if you see from a technology perspective, we are coming from an era where everything was batch-based. So basically, you had some data somewhere. Every day, every hour, you were taking this data, processing it, and creating the proposition, the content that you wanted to provide to your customer. But now with this new pattern of data, this new frequency, you need to adapt, and you need to use this data in a real-time way in order to provide to the customer services that are also real-time. And that's where the streaming analytics come into the game, basically, because it's providing new technology that can enable you as a company to provide these better services. And you can see here how we want to do it in our case. We want to be a smarter bank, and this means that we want to use the streaming analytics to be more personal for the customer. So we want to offer services, product, any kind of communication that is really targeted for the customer, but also it has an added value for him. So in my case, I was going to a holiday. The bank knew that I was going abroad, so we want to inform the customer, okay, you're going on a holiday, so maybe this information about which partnership we have with other bank can be useful for you. And so we are working in that direction, But if you see, adopting a new technology is not something that you can do from one day to another one. There must be also a shift in the people, in the process, in the culture perspective, and that's where Taco can explain a bit.
Because we promised this would be a talk about streaming analytics and DevOps. So why DevOps? And I'm going to, I assume you know about DevOps, but I also want to show you a bit about what we did at ING, what you might not expect. Like we said, changing is about culture, and culture is about some fundamental things. Culture is not something that you easily can change. You can easily say, hey guys, DevOps is hot, so let's work DevOps. Sounds great, but that's not something you can just do and say to your people, today you are DevOps, because it's about values, attitudes, behaviors that you cannot just easily change. This is it's a very classical picture. I assume everybody knows it. It's about the dev and the ops, and they basically hate each other. And we had that at ING as well. It was always a war between the two of them. But around 2010, we started to think differently about this. We already worked agile, but not in an optimal way. And we noticed that the way the dev and the ops worked together was really hindering us in delivering results. And that is why we started to break down this wall of confusion that I just showed you. The only thing was that in the beginning we did it a little bit too enthusiastic. So this is like dev creating a hole in the wall of confusion. You could have said dev is eating ops. But that, of course, is not what you really want to achieve. Because dev and ops, DevOps means working together, not the one taking over the other. So after some tweaking and tuning, we really found a way to work together as one team. And now everybody in ING, everywhere, is working in DevOps teams. So there's no dev, there's no ops, nowhere. And everybody's working on the same goals. And it's really a new way to look at IT. The traditional way, this is one of the things that I always say, is companies who consider IT as a cost center, I think it will never work. As long as you consider IT a cost center, it will never fly. IT is the one that delivers your customer value. And that is why we're also saying ING is an IT company, because we really, the distinguishing value is coming from the IT, not about the smart products that you have another very smart savings account. It's about this, the IT solutions. But like I said, you cannot just go to DevOps because it's really a cultural thing. Many people think it's just organization, let's put them together or let them work together and it will work by itself. Well, it doesn't. You really have to work together. Yes, it's about automation. Yes, it's about tools, but never make it a tooling war. And it's most of all about culture. It's about working together with DevOps and, as we chose it, also with your business. So we usually call it Biz DevOps, because it's not just about IT. Everybody should have the same goals in your company. It's not like business giving orders to the IT company. It's just one team that's all doing it together. And that's why we are now working with a model that has been inspired by Spotify, in which you have tribes, squads, and chapters. The chapters are, let's say, it's people of the same skill set. Could be programmers, Java programmers, front-end developers, but could also be marketeers. And the squads are the teams with multiple disciplines that work together with one goal, always. Everybody is sitting there together, and a couple of squads together is a tribe, and they, for example, make sure that we have the best mortgages possible, the best savings accounts possible. Yeah. So now, to finish that up, I don't want to spend too much time because you have a lot of to listen about the streaming analytics. But we have learned that one thing is key in making this a success, and that is the engineering culture. You cannot succeed if there's not an engineering culture in your company. So we took a lot of effort to make sure that everybody who is doing IT is really into the IT, with his heart, his or her heart. It's not about just, yes, it's about degrees, but it's also about the passion that you have to have for IT. Then it's really come to work. So, Giuseppe, tell us.
Yeah.
Why DevOps in streaming analytics?
So why? Why? Let's see. But so basically, what I like about the story of Taco is that it explained the whole journey that ING started in 2010 and went from the to the people. So let's teach the people how to work in DevOps. And they started with small teams. So just some teams work in DevOps, and then they roll it out to the whole enterprise organization. But I think what is really important in DevOps is also all the tooling that they provide. So also all the continuous delivery pipeline. I think that's something that is really handy for the whole organization. And from now on, I will explain why it's really important DevOps for streaming analytics. And we can say that DevOps is a culture that allows devs and ops to work together in a faster pace. And if you see, the streaming analytics is about also how we can process data in a fast way in order to deliver real-time content. So there is a perfect match between being faster in the IT with the DevOps, so being faster, deliver more quality, and with the streaming analytics to deliver something better for the customer in a real-time way. And if you see, so from now on, I will explain how we work in our department. Basically, we adopt this concept of continuous analytics, which is based on business DevOps, and continuous delivery tooling, basically. And you see that, if you remember the slide that Taco showed with all the organization of the team, you can see that in one single team at ING, there are multiple profiles working together. So there is one data scientist, one data engineer, one data analyst, which is more exploring the data. But also we have a customer journey, so a business person that all work together. And with adopting this continuous analytics model. And using this model, basically every kind of project we work with, it's data oriented. So we have an input from some business representative to get some value out of some data. And so all together they work on the data exploration phase, for instance. So they start seeing where is the data, how we can retrieve it from different perspectives. So the data engineer will work, for instance, on the pipeline, so how to set up a flow of data that can go from the data lake, from the source, to the production environment, but also from the API perspective, to data scientists working on the data itself, so how we can model this data in order to predict future behavior or outcome for the customer. And then you see that all these people, they work together in this circle. So they start with data exploration, then they build the first version of the model, they iterate on it, they put it in production via the API that the data engineering team is providing, and then there is the feedback loop. So in that way, they improve the model itself. And so in our case, especially in my team, we work on one of these applications called Decision Engine. And what actually this Decision Engine is doing is, it's summarized here. Basically, we use customer data, meaning the profile data of the customer. We use the behavior of the customer, so how the customer is behaving on the channels, on the internet, and also transactional data in order to deliver some personalized and smart content to the customer. So all these blocks that you see here, they are part of the personal banking portal. So you can see that every section of the portal is personalized for the customer with some intent. And if you see, for instance, this is one of the examples that I can show you. Here you see the new front end for the personal banking app, and on top of the transaction list, you see a component which is showing this personalized content. So this content is based on, indeed, real-time behavior and transaction from the customer. In this particular case, you can see a credit card payment inside. So what we want to achieve with this insight, we want to give some tips to the customer that can not sell a new product to the customer, but can help them in being better or in managing their finance. And you can see, for instance, for the credit card one, what you see here is basically this customer who has a credit card. He did some expenses during the month, and it's almost time to pay back the money borrowed to the banker. But we see that, for instance, there is not enough money in the current account of the customer. So before the automatic transaction take place, we advise the customer to move some money, for instance, from another account, like the savings account, to the current account. And in that way, the customer will not get a communication from the bank because the automatic transaction to move to repay back the credit card didn't work well. And in this second case, for instance, you can see something, another slot, which is showed below the transaction. And this is, for instance, very similar to my story, because in this case, there is a customer which was doing some reservation online for hotel, or for instance, for a fly or a train ticket. So we spot the pattern. So we see that the customer is probably going to travel somewhere in the near future. And we also see, on the other hand, that the customer does not have yet a travel insurance. So we think, okay, why don't propose to the customer to get one? It can help him to, to have a stressless holiday, let's say. And these are a bit like how we track the result of these insights. So basically, what you can see here, each of these rows is one of the insights. I had to remove the title because I cannot show you, but what is important here is is the data, so the metrics that we take into account. Because basically, we say that given each insight, we create a funnel based on 3 layers. So there is the show layer, so it means, okay, the customer saw this insight. There is the accept layer, which means the customer also had an interaction with insight, maybe a click, maybe a rollover. And the last one is the success, so meaning the customer actually activated the proposition we were offering to the customer, which in the case before could be the customer opened the travel insurance, or basically they moved some money to repay back the credit card. And you can see how we structured the flow, and now actually, applying this applying this decision engine to the personal banking, we can generate an environment that is more personalized and relevant for the customer. So a customer does not have to be bothered with communication that are not really applicable for him, because maybe already you have a product or it's not really in his own mind or in his own behavior. And here you can see how actually these personalized propositions are actually bringing some value to the customer, let's say. But now going back to the streaming analytics, we saw actually how to adopt streaming analytics, you need also to have a DevOps transformation. We saw, for instance, one use case, so my application that we develop in my team, and I want to share some of the information regarding the technology behind this application. So if you see in these slides, basically everything that you have seen there is provided to the customer via a Scala API, but behind there is this engine. So this engine is based on several technologies that you can see on the right side. So there is a streaming processor, which is realized in Apache Flink. There is a message bus built on top of Kafka, and some other technology that are used to, in particular, to define the modeling that we have to apply to the data, and some other rule-based scenario that we also want to define. But if we have a look, for instance, at the business flow, you can see three main steps. No? You have the flow of data, real time. You want to spot somehow a pattern in this data. And then, based on this pattern, so it's like the trigger, you want to then evaluate if the data of the customer is actually a good match for the insight, for the proposition that we want to offer. And we do that with the second step. And I will go in more detail in the second part. And then after this step, actually check if the proposition is applicable for the customer. Then we take care of somehow deliver the content to the customer. Now, if we go back at the pattern detection, there we have something in place that allows us to, given the stream of data, to spot several events in the stream, and based on that, we create this pattern. So, for instance, if the customer has a credit card and the date of the month is almost there, so he has to pay back, and there is not enough money on the current account, then that's, for instance, one case that can be triggered to the second step. The second step is called machine learning engine. Basically, it does two things. It applies some rule-based scenario to the events the pattern that we see, but it's also used some machine learning models. So what you see is that the data scientists, they in this part, in this exploration area, they are allowed to use the data to create some model, and then they can deploy them in the machine learning engine. Basically, once that the model is deployed there, it's taking into account the information from the events as features, and then it's scoring all of the models on those events. And then, if there is a match, so if there is actually something interesting for the customer, it can also be more than one. So we use the score of the model to decide which one is the more relevant for the customer. So we know that in this way we are going to offer something that is personal for the customer because it's based on his behavior, but it's also relevant, and it is the most relevant for that customer. And with the last step, we take care of the notification, because of course we can notify a proposition via the mobile app, or via the portal, or via email. So in that step, there is all the business logic which take care of which channel is the best for that insight, for that recommendation. If we have a look, how many of you knows about Apache Flink? Nice. So there is some people who knows that. But basically, if you see, this is one of the main tools that is part of the streaming analytics technology transformation. So you see that from a technology perspective, we have been going from a batching processing systems to a micro batching, so taking small chunk of data and using them for generating insight. And with the Apache Flink, we go in the directly stream world. So everything is an endless time series, and you have to somehow use this information to generate your case. What I can say about Flink is indeed it's an open source project from data artisans, and they have multiple API to work on it. So mainly you see that the main one is the Python and the Scala. We as a team work with Scala mainly for our API. So for us, it's most easiest and convenient to adopt Scala for dealing with Flink. But also, like the main benefit that Flink is offering us is that it's first streaming, is like pure streaming. So basically, we don't have to chunk data anymore, but we can also analyze the data directly and also get no latency and maximizing the throughput of the data of the application we built with this. And something also interesting is that Flink is having the exactly once semantics, which means that each event you are super sure that each event that you get from this flow of data, it's always just one time processed or taken care in your business logic. Even if there is some restart of the application, some fault somewhere during the pipeline that you are building, it will be always just analyzed one time. And it's also offering us different framing or windowing of the data. So there is a sliding window, but also other type of window that we can apply to data in order to spot the patterns, underneath. And something that we also use a lot is the complex event processing library, because it's allowing us to do the first step of the platform we saw before. So it's allowing us to spot the patterns in the data. And indeed, as I said it you before, it's based on with the DS is offering a DSL which enabling you to say, okay, I want to spot a pattern that starts with this kind of event or this state. Then I want to see this other step and this step. If I see this kind of event happening in a certain amount of time, then I trigger the next step.
So Giuseppe, that was a lot of information, eh? And I think it's good now to wrap up a bit for what did you hear. Before we do that, I want to thank you, because I know firsthand that it works.
Yeah.
I know firsthand that it works, because last time I was in Belgium, and somebody skimmed my debit card. And then my bank called me, it was ING, and they said, hey, your card is being used in Indonesia, but just an hour ago you were in Brussels. Maybe it's a very simple case, but they helped me to avoid a large amount of money being transferred from my banking account. So I know for a fact that these kind of things, even these kind of simple examples, it really helps you as a customer. You are really happy that your bank is doing this. So coming back to the original question, does it really help to do DevOps in data analytics? And maybe, Giuseppe, you can emphasize again that this way of working that we described in BizDevOps really makes a difference. It brings us smarter and faster solutions for customers. You've seen how it's been described, you've seen how it works, you've seen what we do with it, but the way we organize ourselves, that really makes a difference, because we really are better at knowledge sharing, learning, and creating better IT quality. Well, I think we have come to the end of the presentation, and we are open for questions. Thank you. Anybody wants to answer? Yes? Yeah, I can also repeat the question, but you can get the mic, that's maybe easier.
Okay, so cool, thanks for your presentation. My question is about the example of the credit card payment that they approach us to do. That looks to me a very simple case, like an if statement.
Yeah.
Probably enough. So why all the machine learning?
Okay, did everybody hear the question? The question is the example that Giuseppe gave, like your balance is insufficient. That's an almost trivial case. A simple if statement would have done it. Why the machine learning?
Yeah, you see, basically, that's a good point. And this example maybe is not emphasizing the useful case, the usage of the machine learning in that case, But maybe if you see the example of Taco regarding the fraud, because this kind of technology is not just applied to generating new proposition, new service for the customer, but also for fraud detection. So in that perspective, we apply the same kind of platform. So you have the same kind of the pattern detection, and in that case, we apply the machine learning more to given the experience of other customer or other pattern in the clickstream, we want to leverage that also for the current customer. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, there in the back. Okay, I can answer that one. What we do is first when we started to do DevOps, we granted a lot of freedom to engineers, like we have an engineering culture, just pick your choice, it's okay. And it became a total chaos. And there was no learning, there was everybody doing their own stuff. So we decided, okay, yes, engineers, you have a lot of influence, the community decides, but we have to standardize. If we don't standardize, we cannot learn, we can never grow really to a higher level. So now what we do is that we have defined standards on what everybody is using. It's not just like, okay, I love Python, so let's use it. There are a couple of standardized languages, and all the toolings, we call it the continuous delivery pipeline, is completely standardized. So everybody is using, for example, we have one Git, central Git environment, it's GitLab. There all the code of ING resides. We have Jenkins, we have Artifactory, etc. Everything has been completely standardized. Only for these specific cases where you do data streaming, data analytics, they will add specific data analytics tools on top of that. But the major part is standardized over the world, not only in NL, but everywhere ING is working with IT, everything is standardized.
And maybe to add on that, in the case of Scala, if you see, we work, if you see the slide from Taco, we work in chapter, we are organized in chapter, and all the chapters are organized based on skills. No? So for instance, I'm the chapter lead of the fast data chapter, and we work with Scala, we work with Flink, with Spark, so indeed, again, the skill set is defined per chapter, and then the engineers working in in the team for this project, but all the projects related to streaming analytics, they have to adapt. They are coming for chapter like mine, and they have to adapt for instance Scala.
Yes?
As a follow-up question, so in your community, you decide on one tool.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a quick word, right?
Yeah.
So after a year or so, the tool is kind of maybe outdated or
Yes.
Well,
yes, that's always a difficult discussion because you can easily end up in a tool war, and we do. So indeed, there's always a better tool, but the main question remains if it will really add business value. So replacing a tool, will it add more business value if you do that? So, for example, we are now considering of replacing Jenkins. But maybe not, because lots of people love it. Will that bring all the engineers really a lot of benefit? Or maybe we add a second tool, or maybe we are going to use Ansible because it's so cool. But just being cool is not enough. So in the end, we have a lot of discussions, but the use cases should be there to really make the efforts to standardize it again. But the drive always comes from the engineers. They always say, okay, we like this, we see it. And then we adopt, and we try to either also bring it or replace the old tools. Yes?
First of all, thank you for the presentation. Secondly, once I was saying we were too enthusiastic about changing the organization, and I'm curious about how did you show that you were too enthusiastic, what did you recommend, and how did you adopt that, and what do you mean?
Yes. If you all heard, there was a slide with the Marauder, that's the big car smashing through the wall, and I said we were a bit enthusiastic about DevOps. What you saw is that the ops were just living in the old world, and the dev were really stepping into agile and trying to improve. And in their eagerness, they tried to kind of overrule the ops world. And what you saw is that at some point, everybody was saying it's all about code, it's all about engineering. Processes don't matter anymore. Basically, the thing of the ops people is like, okay, reliability, stick to the process, stick to your ITIL processes. And we kind of abandoned those a bit, like they're not so important. And at some point, you saw that back in your reliability, because you do need a change process. At some point, you do need to be predictable. So we were a bit too rigid in getting rid of process in favor of engineering. And that we had to correct. So both parts are equally important. Only the way you do it, with ops should not be somebody at the end of the chain making the checks. All the checks should be incorporated into your process. And that is what the ops people are now doing. Yes?
Again, a follow-up question on that.
Of course.
You said, okay, no processes or DevOps, and now you went back to the processes because you needed them. So how do the teams organize themselves? Do they all use Scrum, or especially, for instance, the data scientists, do they work?
You want to answer that one?
I can answer that one because it's also a bit like, okay, to avoid the tool word. Basically, you see that we have, in our case, we are organizing chapters based on the skills. So in my case, we have the fast data chapter working on the streaming technology. But on the other hand, we have the data science chapter where all the let's say the data scientists come together within one team, let's say. But this way of organizing is cross together with the actual day-by-day team work, because basically we have, like, for instance, 5 chapters, one for fast data, data science, data explorators, for instance, or customer journey experts. And then in one team, there are like one person from each of these one. And on the other hand, to still, because for instance, all the data engineers, they work on different projects, also to come together, to work, to learn together, to do knowledge sharing. We also have in place mastery days in our case, and those days are like one day every 3 weeks, where all the data engineers, all the data scientists, they come together and they work on new technology, new tool, and they align. Maybe, okay, someone went to a conference and learned something new and can share in the team. So those are the moments where all the members of the chapter, they come together and do share knowledge and explore new technology, for instance.
Yeah, we really try to make time for engineering culture. So people can also organize a guild, which means people with the same share of interest can organize themselves. Hey, we have front-end guilds and everything, where people stick together and spend time. We really want them to make that time to develop themselves as engineers and work together. Yes?
If I understood correctly, when you had the workflow, you said the data scientists might have their own environment, and then the models would be deployed with the
Yeah.
pipeline, right?
Yeah.
So my first question would be like, how do you deploy those models? Which tech do you use? And the second one would be, how do you track the performance of each model? Do you split like A/B and some people with some models and
Yeah. Yeah, I can respond to that one. You see that basically one of the main advantage of the continuous analytics model is that there is abstraction between all steps, all persons that are working. And in that example, for instance, we have data scientists working with the technology like Python and all those libraries to do exploration. And what you see that they build their model with the Python, for instance, and then they convert it to an interface language called PMML, and then that one can be picked up or used from, for instance, Flink. So you see there, because there is always this kind of fight between, okay, data scientists which want to work with Python, which is more open, but also data engineer which have to put things in production in a scalable way. So they have to use, therefore, Scala. So you see that using this PMML language, we have an interface between data scientists working on their own model and building their own model, and on the other side, engineers putting those models in production. And on the other side, indeed, like what you see that they work also with ABA tests. So basically, they indeed put in place multiple versions, and they can score and see which one is the best. That is, is indeed performing better.
Question. Who decides which techniques, technologies are used to which tech?
In general, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course we have, we are ING, yeah? So we're a big organization, we have boards for that, and in the end, the senior management, let's say the IT management team decides. But we have a tooling tech board, which consists of representatives of the organization. You can make proposals, and they kind of assess it, and then in the end, the management team decides. Just to make sure that everything is going, let's say, a bit orderly. We have a department called Enterprise Architecture, and there they have the tooling architects, and they kind of keep track of everything that has been standardized, so that it's also properly, let's say, advocated in the organization.
Yeah, maybe to add on that, what I really like about the engineering culture is that, okay, although there is senior management involved, the initiative, they start from the engineers. We give freedom to people to come with their own technology and idea. If they think that something can outperform another technology that is already in place, they are open to, work during the mastery day on this, make a proof of concept, bring it there, and then to evaluate it and to replace the other technology.
But our senior management are also programmers, eh? So the IT management is just as well programming Java. It's not like people who just can steer; they really know their stuff. So they're on equal level, you could say. Yeah. Yes, your question there.
Last question, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, let's say that we can say that basically data scientists, they work in their environment, so they have like a data exploration cluster, okay? And there are, let's say, different environments, no? So data exploration cluster and a data exploitation cluster where actually the model are put in production. And there is like, a linkage between these two worlds. So, but it's also part of the day-by-day work. Right? Data engineers and data scientists, they work together, sitting in the same open space together. So they a bit organize themselves. Okay, when a model is ready and we can put it in production. And then in the two worlds, in the two clusters, there are like some job in place to move the data from one place to another one, or the model from one place to another one.
Okay, we have run out of time. We are here all day.
Yeah.
So if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to contact us. You can also, I would really advise you to go to the ING stand. We are hiring. So if you are inspired by this story and you think this might be interesting, please come by. Yeah? And we can facilitate that. So thank you for joining.
Yeah.
And hope to see you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.